All right, guys, welcome to the Think Alpha Project. We're back here with a lovely couple here. So we've got Jessica, we've got Joseph, and how do you say your last name?
Chicas.
Chicas.
Yeah.
Chicas means girls in Spanish
Well, do you ever get asked about that or something?
all the time.
Really?
Yeah, and now she has to carry the name, so it's like
Dang.
now she's in on the joke.
You know, I'm joking.
Well, I
Exactly.
hyphenated because I had to keep my name, but
Oh yeah,
now it
Professors
makes me
always
more
do. I've
unique.
noticed that.
yeah.
By
No,
the way.
she's Morales Chicas. Yeah,
That's so funny. So
yeah,
funny.
it's good.
But it's good
It's
though.
good. Oh
It's
yeah,
good.
it's good.
Yeah. Once again, thank you guys for being on. I
Yeah,
appreciate this. You
absolutely.
know. So we'll first let's get right into it. So I want to know what you two are an outstanding couple. You guys
Thank
are what
you.
I call goals. Because like we just mentioned earlier, you guys are young, you guys are successful and continuing to achieve more success. But you found a way to blend in going forward in life, but also growing together and at and being young at the same time. And me personally, from my perspective, I don't see that often. It's not that common. But I want to first off ask what you guys consider to be your expertise. I know you guys do two different things.
Hmm.
So if you want to start, yeah,
Ladies
ladies
first.
first.
Great.
Ladies
Okay.
first.
So my expertise really revolves around education and educational equity. And so a lot of my work as a professor at Cal State LA is to do research in how to understand what gets people to be motivated, especially in STEM, meaning science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm not a STEM major, and I think part of me reflected on why that was, right? Why I got sort of funneled into a certain profession. And I think part of it is because our schools don't really motivate students to get into that route
Yeah.
using hands-on technology or whatever it is. So that really is my expertise in terms of research, and then I couple that with my community work. So I run two nonprofits, both housed at UCLA. One is for girls and one's for boys. They're both for middle school
Wow.
students. And we do hands-on learning with technology. We teach them how to develop their own apps, how to code the apps, use 3D printing, innovative technologies, and we give them college credit. So that's sort of where I spend my Saturdays on a monthly basis, like
Busy.
one Saturday a month, and then we do summer programming. And then I teach. And so part of my teaching revolves around understanding development across the board, lifespan development, but also looking at racial equity in education in particular, and how we can bridge, policy, how we can bridge practice and teaching and pedagogy to really, get ahead as people. I particularly focus on people of color and lower income individuals. And so that's sort of my 9 to 5, as we call it, and then we do consulting work, and so I brand myself as a diversity equity consultant as well.
Wow. That is a
Yeah,
mouthful.
so
That's,
yeah,
that's
that's
great. That's great.
yeah. So my first job is to be her husband. So
Everyone.
that's like that's a you know a job I hold very dearly and proud of. In my professional expertise, I would say I got a pretty diverse expertise because I realized through the years that I've just needed to really be adaptable to like the changing environment, the economic circumstances, the social circumstances that I'm surrounded by here, living in Los Angeles, one of the most diverse cities of the world. So I thought I really need a skill set that fits our local economy, and what our local economy really looks like is very different. It could be political, it could be creative, it could be entrepreneurial, and that those are really my buckets. Um, I really care about community, and the way that I give back is through my education work. So I also teach part time at USC School of Social Work, where I teach policy. I teach social workers how do we organize together to combat adverse policies that we know are going to negatively affect communities of color. So unfortunately, we have a president here in the United States that has given us a lot of content to push back against,
Right.
whether it's injustices that are faced by our immigrant communities that are getting deported, or healthcare rights that are being threatened against women and children. Um, I'm really focused on like building the next generation of social workers that are going to go out, push policy, push programs that are going to make a difference. I also work in the Marshall School of Business at USC, where I do career advising, and that job is really cool. I'm really passionate about it because I get to serve veterans that served our country and now are coming back into civilian community and wanting to build their business experience. And so they're getting their master's in business. It's only for veterans.
Oh, cool.
And I get to advise them on what are the opportunities in the civilian world, whether it's in aerospace, consulting, banking, finance, in technology, in the creative space. I really help them process what are the opportunities out there. And that fits really well with my next bucket, which is entrepreneurship. I have a couple startups that I've gotten off the ground. Some focus on virtual reality technology.
Wow.
I'm looking also at blockchain and Bitcoin because I think those are emerging technologies that are really going to make a difference in the world. We built our consulting firm together, so really proud about that work and getting contracted by the city to do social impact campaigns. And so I'm really excited about that work. And I got a product based on this plant called Chaya that is helping to reduce diabetes in the rural areas of Mexico, where Mayans have been using this plant for centuries, and yet we don't have it commercially available. So I'm building a business. Yeah, so I'm building a business to get that out, and that's just been really exciting. And the creative side, I love creative work. I love photography, film. I love to fly drones, and I love to storytell, just like you.
Yeah.
So people got really amazing stories throughout the city, and I like to be, I like to tell those stories and share those narratives because I think they could be educational, inspiring in many ways. So that's kind of like a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing. Yeah.
Wow. And you just said something about drones. So my twin brother has the Mavic Pro, the DJI Mavic Pro.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, don't touch it. This is so expensive, right? So we go to Dominican Republic in October, and we're flying this thing. And he flies for about 15 minutes, and he was like, Val, you want to try? I go, what you mean? Of course I'm going to try it, right?
Yeah.
So I try it, and I figured, look, I played video games growing up. I still play here and there. I got this. So I'm doing it, flying it way in the air, bringing it down. All of a sudden, check this out. I take it back out, and it just hits a right, like out of nowhere. I didn't do it. So he sees it. He's like, Val, what are you doing, bro? And I'm like, what? Here's a controller. I'm not, I'm trying to, have it go the opposite way. Long story short, it runs right into a building. We're both watching it like this, and it just runs right into a building.
Yeah.
And I mean, good thing it didn't hit anybody because it was like at the height where it can hit somebody.
Yeah.
And after that, it's safe to say, I think I'm cool on flying drones.
Yeah, they do have a mind of their own sometimes.
Yeah.
Because newer technologies, we're still experimenting with them.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And what I got from the two of you sharing your stories and what you guys are into is that you both, to me, seems like you both are really into uplifting people who want guidance, like be it the youth or be it, like you said, veterans. So what are some of the biggest challenges you guys see when it comes to that? Like what, as you're growing people and developing people, what are some of the challenges you guys have come across when it comes to developing people?
I think some of the challenges would be just making a connection with people. I think there's a lot of folks that want to give mentorship. There's a lot of folks out there that have expertise, but how do you find them? So I think some of the work that I've done in the past was creating mentorship programs to connect people, to bridge them. One of the programs I developed at UCLA as an undergrad was called GUM, Graduate Undergraduate Mentorship Program. Pun intended, GUM means sticking together. And part of it was because, especially with people of color who want to go and they have this intent to want to help people and help others grow, right? It's inherent in us because a lot of us come with different experiences and someone helped us get to where we are, right? At least that was my experience and his experience. And so, sometimes we just need a vehicle to connect us to make that bridge. And I think that's sort of the challenge is that how do we make that bridged connection at a grand scale? And I think right now it's sort of missing. I think people are doing it at institutions, people are doing it locally through nonprofits, but how can we make it at a grand scale, maybe through an app? I'd love to challenge some young folks out there to create an app where we can have the big mentorship program and people could just connect, especially now with the baby boomers retiring. There's so much talent out there, and there's going to be a lot of gaps to fill.
Yeah.
And how do we then help people gain access to those individuals to really create something?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and what about you?
Yeah. For me, I'm just gonna bring it at a just more micro level. What I find is that we grow up, especially in communities of color, we grow up with this mindset that there's we're always striving to break through. We're always striving to break through.
Yeah.
Economic class, social class. We're always striving. We're always pushing because oftentimes we come from poor, low income families, communities where schools are broken, where the community leaders might be corrupt, where parks might not have, programming, where crime is rampant, and so we get psychologically, we get these messages and we internalize messages saying we're inferior, we're less than, we're not. It's hard to make it through out of here, and then that's a mentality that's really hard to break. And then once you get out and you try breaking through, the private sector, the corporate world reinforces some of those messages, right? And so you go out into the marketplace with your education, if you've made it through, and then you get dictated. Here's your value.
Yep.
Here's what you're worth. Here's your ceiling. Whether it's women, people of color, we experience a lot of the same challenges and barriers. And so for me, there's this like continuous like psychological reinforcement, and it's negative, right? And so we got to combat that, and we got to be resilient. Like we have to fight, we have to penetrate, and I think we're oftentimes trained to just be employees, and I think that we need to reshift that and say our value is infinite.
Right.
Our potential is infinite. We could be an employee, but we could also be an entrepreneur. We don't have to go work for someone. We could build our own thing. And I think that getting through like that message that you got to stay positive, you got to stay focused, your potential is infinite. Like these are all messages I think that our communities really need to hear, and they need to see the success stories coming back to these neighborhoods, sharing, here's what I've done, here's how I made it, here's my blueprint, you can do it too. And I think that goes back to the mentorship piece. I do think we need more mentors coming back into these neighborhoods, success stories, because there are many out there, and I think we can multiply them more times over by sharing them and breaking through that psychological kind of hurdles that are constantly being thrown at our communities.
Right. Did you? And I know that that's such a great point, because I feel like I've had to go through in terms, I remember in nursing school, for example, at Cal State LA, I was starting, and I come in. It's not the classroom yet; it's the office. It's the administration office, and I come in and I'm wearing these baggy basketball shorts, right? And I'm wearing like a t-shirt. And obviously I look like I could be a ball player, whatever. And I go in there and they notice that I'm filling out the paperwork that the students that are enrolled would fill out. Like, it's like a file. Anyways, one of the ladies there, they asked me, are you in the wrong building? And I go, this is the nursing office, right? And they go, yeah. I go, yeah, no, I'm filling this out. I say, oh, okay. So, I start filling it out, and then, you know what one of them told me? They said, make sure that, make sure that you have a backup for this, because, I don't really know, I don't really know if this is going to work out. For a lot of people, this doesn't work out. And of course, it may be her own bias, right? But I'm telling you, this is the type of conversation that I feel people like us go through.
Oh yeah,
all the time. And it may not even be as obvious, because for her it was pretty overt.
Yeah.
Right. But even the ones that are very low key, the micro, at the micro level that are happening, where someone is acting towards you with that in mind, and they act like you're not gonna make it. I guess and I remember going through things like that, or even when some of the hospitals that I get involved with, or some of the places that I'm in, and people kind of act funny, and then all of a sudden when I talk, they're like, who's this guy?
Right.
My question to you guys is like, are there some times, I'm sure you guys have probably been through something like that for yourselves. I'm just wondering if that's the case.
Yeah, let me take a first crack at this. But so part of the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is like this negative psychological reinforcement. But it's also the systems that our children are having to navigate that are just ill-equipped to serve them. So, for example, in LAUSD, the ratio between counselor and student is, for every one counselor is 2,200 students. How on earth is a counselor in K through 12 in public school here in LA supposed to serve 2,200 children and instill upon the children the confidence, the skill set, the resources for them to break through all these barriers that they're facing in their community and in their school? Like, it's impossible. The ratio's out of whack. Not enough resources to support it. Now it kind of makes sense. Like, my counselor told me college wasn't for me, so I had to get in and get out. It's not for you. You're next, right? How could that person possibly try to serve me? I'm just a number. And so I think that's part of the problem. It is systematic lack of resources, and that's all I really want to say about that. In community college, my counselor also said that I was crazy to think that I would ever transfer to USC and UCLA, and I graduated from both. So that's in the face of my counselor. But had I listened, imagine, my own college counselor in community college, had I listened to that person, where would I be right now, right? And so I want to encourage like our listeners that whoever tells you can't, whoever tells you, oh no, you should think this route, like, I think you could tell them go to hell, and you figure out your own damn solution, or you reach out to other people that are going to be positive, that are going to be affirmative, because there's no space in this world for negativity.
Right.
There's no space for naysayers. The naysayers and the haters, they can get going about their business and do what they do, because we got to keep it pushing.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add too, I think part of it a lot of the times comes from our implicit biases, right? So one thing I teach my students is, it doesn't matter who you are or experiences, we all have implicit biases, and we have to own it, whether you're a person of color or not, right? Sometimes we do it upon our own people, and those are deep-rooted things we get through the media, things we hear our parents say, things we hear walking down the street. It could be body language. And those things get perpetuated and perpetuated. And the thing is that, like, we're talking about microaggressions, right? I think that's what you were hinting at, is this idea that sometimes this implicit bias, right, over and over and over. If you think about a mosquito, there's a great YouTube video. You could type microaggressions, mosquito bites, and you can see, right, one subtle insult maybe won't hurt, but over time, 500 of them, right, can be toxic to your mental health, to your, your dreams and aspirations. And I think, these microaggressions, these insults happen as early as, you can comprehend, really. I mean, 4-year-olds in preschool are already, being funneled into the school to prison pipeline, right? And teachers don't even realize that they're doing that, right? And it's not that they're well-intended a lot of the times. The administrators are well-intended, the parents are, but these implicit biases over time really add up. And so I think we really need to recognize, regardless of who you are, right? Check your privilege, check your bias, because whether you're intending it or not, sometimes we do those things, and they really impact people.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. That was great input. This definitely, and what I believe is, like, even if I'm going to do something like this and it affects it by this much, then I'm happy, because we just need more leaders to continue to step up and continue to be the example. Like you said, with counselors, with such a difference in or shortage of counselors in terms of the ratio. I mean, it's important that we just don't have enough, community and enough example. I relied heavily on my black fraternity, like on my fraternity. During when I was in nursing school, I was the only black male there. Period. Like there's nobody I could see, nobody I could talk to, nothing. And I'm grateful that my dad's a nurse. Called him all the time. He's a nurse for like 20 years. So I got to call him, but I mean, once again, he's been a nurse for 20 years. He's now he's in his 60s. At the time, he's in his 50s. So the support, I just really thank God for the support elsewhere. It wasn't nursing support necessarily, but what's cool is I got that kind of support. I think young folks, that's what's needed. Enough examples, enough people. And for anybody who's listening to this and you know that you're a leader, just know that you're needed. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and I really want to touch on that because it is important that as we climb the tiers of academia, our education, professionally, like we have to come back. Like you can move out of the hood and be okay coming back to the hood and giving back. Like that's okay. Yeah. And we do have a moral obligation to come back because in the way that you might have needed someone back then to uplift you during a time where your counselor knocked you, some kid is going through that right now and they need you. And the question is, what organizations are in that community that you can get involved in, that you can give back to? And if there isn't an organization, can you build one? Who can you partner with at that local level? And so we have an obligation to come back and serve and bring the lessons learned. Because just like you and I can know something about cameras and film and all that, we might be able to provide knowledge to a youngster that's trying to get in the game and have them avoid all the obstacles that we may have come across.
Man, there are
so we can either have our communities go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or we can just say, oh no, community, we've seen it, we've been through it, we failed, we've got back up. Here's how you go from A through G. Right? And so that's a commitment I think we got to make. And I challenge everybody listening to do that.
And I just want to add one point because I think one thing I've noticed working with students is they think, I want to help people, right? And that's great. Everyone should want to help people, but you don't have to just do it through helping professions. You're doing it in STEM as a nurse, as a doctor, as a lawyer, right? As a lobbyist, pushing change and policy. You could do it as an entrepreneur, right? Building, as Joseph was saying, a plant that can really fight diabetes. You can do it through so many things, through an app, that can change the world. And so I think that's the main misconception is we put ourselves in this box. I want to help people, so I should be a teacher, a social worker, a this, and a that. And that's great, right? That's the field we chose, and we love them. But you can help in other ways, and sometimes helping is through capital, right? And I think that's sometimes what we often lack as people of color through years of oppression, right? How can we break through that, right? And really build capital to then help others, right? Because you need capital to then build a nonprofit. You need capital to build, a big movie, right? To push social change. And so the only way we can do that is to break out of that box.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're really placed into that because we're given advice. Well, if you want to help people, you have to go this direction. You can help people whether you're whatever profession you are, right? You shouldn't be placed into a box.
And I want to add to that because service and giving back is absolutely critical to build our communities. Absolutely. But it's also it's okay to work on yourself first. And I want to make that clear because
what do you mean?
Yeah, because sometimes we get caught up in this notion, especially in our professions like in education, social work, policy, that we're always fighting for the greater good. We're always fighting to change a condition, change a policy, change a program. And sometimes we give so much to the movement that we neglect ourselves. So spiritually, how are we doing? Emotionally, how are we doing? Psychologically, how are we doing? Physically, how are we doing? Right. Emotionally, how are we doing? And so we have to be able to hold ourselves accountable to our own well-being. Because at the end of the day, my ability to give back is only predicated on my ability to get up, eat breakfast, be in the right state of mind, because I got to move an agenda. I got to move people. I got to uplift people that are down.
Right.
And you could only do that if you're strong internally. And so let's not neglect ourselves. And let's be okay with the fact that taking care of our own bodies, our own spirit, our own mind, that's okay. That is sometimes a requirement to take care of the rest. And so that's not selfish. That's not evil. That's a good thing. Yeah. And I think we need to reframe that too. In social work, we call it self-care.
Exactly.
We got to take care of ourselves. Yeah. And so I just want to relay that message to the audience, because sometimes we feel guilty about it, and I don't think we should.
And same with relationships.
Ooh.
Oh.
Which I had a feeling this was the next transition.
Yes, it was. This is great. So, same thing with relationships, and you're right. And I don't know where it happened that it became vilified to take care of yourself first. And honestly, to you guys, just to share with you guys, I know that, the audience has heard this before, but for me, I spent a lot of time being a people pleaser. Even down to my career, is because, my parents really, that's really what they wanted me to do. They really wanted me to go the medical route. It's going to be nursing and then medicine. I did nursing, jumped in the hospital. I worked at UCLA.
Nice. And
there, about a few months in, I'm like, no, I don't do this. This isn't what I want to do. Like, it never was. So it's interesting. It's interesting that when you tend to want to do things for yourself that's in your best interest, oftentimes you get made wrong for it, or that's what I've seen. And to me, it's like, where did that start happening? And it wasn't until I switched my entire life, which happened as recent as a year ago, that my life started to look completely different. Because I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. Even in my dating, I'm dating and stuff like that. It's like, I no longer put myself at a discomfort, because I want you to feel good about me, but it's at my expense. Like, I can tell on the inside, I feel like I don't really want to be in this position, or I don't really want to do this or do that, but I want you to feel good. And I've learned that just doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure. I feel you on that.
You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna talk about that, because you guys are a model for. Well, that's what it feels like. It doesn't just look like it, but it feels like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's a vibe. That's all it is. So you guys are a great model. That's what it feels like. Where have you guys, in terms of that self-care, when it comes to people dating, what advice do you guys have, like, for people who are out there dating, when it comes to self-care?
Yeah. I know you love stories.
Yeah.
So I got a story for you.
Good. Good.
10 years ago, we met at UCLA in the dining halls, and I specifically recall that moment in my life as definitely significant, because I'm meeting my future wife, obviously. But also, like, I was reaching my young prime, and the work that I needed to do to get to that moment in time when I first met her was very significant, because in my late teens, early 20s, I realized that I had been masking a lot of my insecurities, a lot of my deficiencies as a person, my lack of attention at home, just a bunch of stuff, a lot of emotion, a lot of negative emotion. I'd been masking it, being in relationship by relationship by relationship, where I needed validation from, like, other people, when really I should have. I was striving happiness. I was looking for happiness in all the wrong places. Happiness starts with you. And I began to learn in my early 20s that I needed to focus on being happy internally, being the best person I can be, being the best uncle, being the best friend, being the best student, being the best community activist. Like, just focus on me. Without a relationship, without any noise, just focused. And that took significant amount of work. I really needed to be away from like the noise. I needed to be away from relationships. I needed to be away from dependency on other people to validate my own existence. And so I was at a really good point because I found that.
Wow.
And then, as God would have it, at the moment where I am at the not pinnacle, but in the pinnacle at that time, the best version of myself, I meet my wife.
Wow.
And that was significant for me because I was like, here's a person that is beautiful on the inside out who I don't need right now. I don't need her as a crutch. I don't need her to validate my existence, but I want her. I want her to be on this journey with me.
She's like,
yeah, I want her to be on this journey with me because I'm in my prime right now. This is my season. And so for me, the underlying message there is work on you. Like, don't go chasing validation from the world. Seek it from yourself. And there's a lot of ways of going about that. Beefing up on your schooling, finding that career that you're really passionate about, meditating, doing physical activities and exercise, surrounding yourself with positive people who want the best for you, staying away from the hard, drugs. You can party, but keep it within reason.
Yeah.
Focus on family, focus on the good friends. And I think once you bring all those things together, you make yourself a whole person, and now you're ready to receive love. But you gotta love yourself first. And so that's why our love for us, why I was ready to receive her love. I needed to fight for it. She was playing a little hard to get. It was tough. I'm not saying it just came from the sky. I still had to court her and date her and do all the things.
Had to put in that work.
As I should, of course. But I needed to be ready, and I was ready. So I think that's what happened. Had she caught me at another season in my life, I may not have been ready. And so,
wow.
you gotta stay ready so you don't get ready.
I'm listening.
Okay?
You're talking to me.
So that's my story with the underlying message.
And I think on the opposing end, which is interesting, like the sort of black and white opposing story, I was always anti-dating because I wanted to be this independent woman that had everything together, and I wanted to go to school, and I didn't want to disappoint my parents, and any guy was not going to ruin my path, right? So that was sort of the perspective I had, and I got to a point in time in college where I said, maybe I should allow myself to let someone else in. I had this huge guard for no reason. I didn't want my path to go away because I saw that happen so many times, like with my friends and communities and family. And so I said, no, this is my chance to at least let someone in. So this guy got very lucky also that I happened to be in a place in my life where I was going to allow someone a chance. And that little chance, as he said, it was hard work. He had to work for it, right? But I was allowing myself to do that. And I think there's two sides of the coin here, right? You can have someone who's just not ready, and then you can have someone who maybe is not ready, but for different reasons, right? And I think in both of those stories, you have to allow yourself, right, to be ready internally for yourself, but also for others. And that takes work. And let me tell you, even when we were just dating, it's a process. It's a process of like letting your guard down. It's a process of getting to know each other and getting to know yourself. Because when you date someone, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah, like about yourself. That's right.
More than anything.
That's right.
And even with breakups, I think you learn a lot about yourself as well.
Yeah, every breakup that I've been through, I've left with so much more insight on who I am through the relationship. Yeah, for sure. So how long were you guys like dating before let's just say you guys got engaged?
So so speaking of breakups, I'm gonna just say something really quick. So we were together for about 2 years, going very strong, and then we did break up for about a year. And I say this because it's relevant to our story, right? I think I don't want people to think, oh, they're this great couple and they didn't have any difficulties. We did. I mean, dating is hard. It's hard work. And it's hard work because I think we were both very driven in our own journeys. And at some point you have to make a decision, right? Are you going to keep going on this route and then allow the other person, your significant other, to go along with you? Or is their path simply different? And at some point you have to come to grips with that. So we came to a point where, I was like, well, you want to go into politics and you want to, at the time, that's what he was doing, and you want to go travel the world, like that long distance relationships don't work for me. It's just not going to work. So I'm not in the position to hinder anyone's dreams and goals. And I think you need to realize that when you're in a relationship. If you're in a relationship and it's driven by one person's dreams and goals, then what's in it for you? Right?
Wow.
And so that was very tough. It was very tough. We broke up for about a year, and I said, if he happens to come back, I'll be open to it. We didn't end on bad terms. We ended for the purpose of our self-development. And if it works out, it works out. And lo and behold, here he is again. And then we dated for another about 2 years. And then we got married.
Wow.
Yeah. But I think a lot of young professionals that are together and dating, maybe your college sweetheart or someone you just got out of college, and you're both grinding. You're both chasing your dream, and sometimes you can chase your dreams together, and then sometimes you got to come apart and chase your dream. And then sometimes I kind of challenge a little bit of what she said, because sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, we're gonna focus on you chasing your dream. I'm gonna put mine in the shelf for right now, and we're just gonna go get. And I've seen couples do that.
Yeah.
I actually, it's really impressive to see the amount of couples that are willing to kind of shelve their own dream to pursue the dreams of another.
Yeah, it is.
And sometimes we've actually had to do that now, being married, and it works. But as long as there's a balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay, we've gotten your dream done. You got your education out of the way. Now I gotta go do me. You got my back like I had your back. Cool. We're in it together, and there's a cooperative, balanced relationship in that sense. Whenever the scale is too tipped one way or another, I think that's unfair. I think that's unhealthy, because you should never shelve your dream forever for anybody, in my opinion. I don't have kids though, and I understand, and we don't have kids, but I understand that some people are confronted with, damn, I was going to be a lawyer working in Washington, D.C. Now I have my kids and my whole family's in L.A., so I got to stay here. And so you modify your dream.
Right.
I think that's, but to forfeit it,
completely.
Yeah, I just think we got to really be careful about our dreams, because we get one life. We get one life. That's it. There's only one guarantee. Yeah. That you have one. There's no repeats. Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. We might come back I don't know if you come back as a cat or whatever, but we only got one that we're guaranteed, and so we got to make the most of it. Yeah. And hopefully you're with the right partner that'll propel you to do that. And if you're not, then you got to reevaluate.
I think interesting you say that, because I feel like your dream, or let's just maybe rephrase it as, I would rephrase it as your purpose. Like if we were to say your purpose is tied to who you are. I really believe that my purpose is tied to who I am. So if there's anything, or a partner who is, how they feel about it, or they're stifling my purpose, it's just, to me, it's what you just said is correct. It's like, if you have someone who doesn't let you do that, or at least there's a plan and action so that you can at least have it. Maybe it might be modified, but not completely, let go. I think that's when it is a problem. Just because, I've been in a relationship where it's like I'm trying to go for something, but then I get yelled at, or the person is really angry or upset. Maybe they just are afraid of not seeing me as much. I don't know, but I've noticed that when it's like that, it's like, okay, well, this is who I am. This is why I do what I do. So what do you guys have for a guy like me, who is still, I'm still out there looking. Actually, let me ask you this, because this would be great for both of you, and the perspectives would be awesome. So you are what I would say goals. Like you're at a point where I'd like to be in my life eventually, right? And what advice do you have for me, who is a guy who's pursuing his purpose, is going for something in his life, but also would like someone to share that with as well? What do you have for me?
question. Well, I would say, first of all, don't let the foot off your gas pedal. Because as I mentioned to you earlier, when you're chasing it, you're chasing your purpose, you're defining your purpose, and you're building yourself up to be the best version of yourself. I feel like that's when, like, that's when you see people in the lens through which you can really see whether they're a complement to your purpose and long-term purpose and your long-term existence. And so I think it really starts with that lens. So I would just say, keep your foot on the gas pedal, and also be aware that the person that you're ultimately going to end up with may already be in your life. They may already be there. And for one reason or another, it may not have fleshed out just yet, but you have people in your life that you can depend on, that you can lean on, that you've built trust with, that you're respectful with, that understands your grind, that respects your grind, but that's going through their own thing. They're on their own grind, they're in their own lane, they're on their own pathway. And destiny might have it that eventually there's a convergence, right? Of both of your pathways.
Which it seems like happened to you guys.
And that's exactly what happened. Conversely, they may not be in your life at all. Mm-hmm. They might pop up while you're changing the meter at the parking lot. And as luck and grace and faith and God would have it, you just meet and you connect. And what I would say on that note is your instinct dictates at that point. And that you have reason, we all have reason, but your gut, that little feeling like, wait, that, and you got to pay attention to that, because that can lead you to that person as well.
But does it happen right away? Like, does it always? I feel like it doesn't always happen right away. Like, for example, when you met her, did it?
Nah,
it wasn't right away.
No, it doesn't.
And when it does, you may want to then reevaluate why.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think one thing,
true.
before I forget, one thing about folks who get into their 30s, we're both in our 30s now, and I think we fall in love with the idea of someone rather than a person, and then that's where it can get a little bit dicey, because you are now chasing this idea. And you have this idea of a person, and they have to match every little detail. And when you get married, you think that that person is going to be even better and more significant, and they're going to cater to you, and vice versa. And when that happens, life is not like that, right? There's going to be trials. There's going to be errors. You're going to fight. You're going to get on each other's nerves, and that's part of the process. And that idea sometimes shatters because it's not this perfect picture that you wanted. And so I think rather than chasing this idea of this imaginary person, right, really just letting people in because of who they are as an individual. And when you can do that, then that's when it'll happen organically. Wow. But I think in your 30s, especially for women, right, I think it's something men is very different, right? We have an internal clock, whether we want to admit it or not. Some women are very blessed. Check your male privilege. Some women are very blessed to be fertile in their 40s. But a lot of women are not, right? And so we have this social pressure, like, to have children by 30. But then we also have the social pressure to not get pregnant by early 20s, right? So we're getting these constant pressures. And so by the time we're 30, women are sometimes so eager to just get in a relationship because I only have 5 years, right? Before all these risks happen. And so women are at a different position than men a lot of the times, and different pressure. And then we rush into things to meet those life goals of this ideal person that we want to date. And that's when things can get a little bit dicey, right? And you have to reevaluate, am I with this person because they're an idea of who I want to be with? Or am I with this person because I truly love them and I can build with them and we can strive together?
Yeah, that's and I would add to that and say, don't chase, don't go trying to find your future wife. Go find your future best friend that you can live with forever, because at the end of the day, that's what we are. And I always have to go back whenever I'm a jerk, whenever I'm really stressed out and the stressors of life are really coming down and I may not be being the best version of myself, the best husband. I got to go back and I got to say, this is my best friend. So I gotta have her back. And so we're in this together. I'd rather spend time with her than anyone in the world, right? And so that's the arrangement. That's the marriage. That's what I entered into. I didn't enter into a contract with a spouse, right? I entered into a long-term relationship with my best friend. So we also got to be cautious of who we're chasing, why we're chasing. Can we see ourselves, right, spending the rest of our lives together, having conversation, going to football games, hanging out and just watching TV. Like, when everything is turned off and it's just about me and her, can we sit with the love, the emotion, the trials, the tribulations, the ups and the downs? And for me, the answer has always been yes with her. So that makes it really easy for me to be like, well, this is it. This is for me. And so find your best friend, find your best friend yeah.
And that takes time to develop.
I'm saying, man, it takes time. It takes some time.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
It takes some time, man. It takes some time. Yeah.
They're just gonna pop up out of nowhere. You ain't gonna lie. You ain't gonna lie.
Then you're gonna call Joseph. Joseph, you were right.
He's like, you know what, bro?
Yeah, wow.
She lived upstairs. So.
This whole time.
And what happens is, in relationships, we always start with a guard or a mask at first, and then as time goes on, we take it off.
Yeah.
And we show our true selves. And so the challenge is also, how can I get this person to show me their true self as soon as possible, so I can know, because your time is precious, our time is precious, time on earth is precious. How can I find out who this person is as quickly as possible, not rushed but quick, to learn, are we aligned,
Right.
morally, spiritually, physically, psychologically? Are we aligned or are we not?
No.
And people have different purpose in our life. Some men, some women serve different purposes in our life, and understanding where they fit in our life is also like really important. And so I'm with you, brother, and I got you. If you ever need, if you ever need some consultation,
bro, I gotta talk to you for a second, man.
I got friends are wrestling with this now. I got a bunch of younger, guys in their 30s that are just recently married, and you realize that marriage is tough. It's a lot of negotiation,
Commitment,
and it's a commitment. And so if you're not willing to make that, then you got to reevaluate before you even go into it, because it's a serious matter. This shit is serious.
It's life.
Yeah. We share a bank account. Right?
Yeah, it's real.
Right? We got assets together. Our families are intertwined now, thankfully, and it's a serious thing. So make your choices wisely.
Can I say one thing
for
those that are in a relationship and maybe want to know sort of what I think is a good secret, and what I learned in our relationship or in our journey, is that we each need love in a different way. And I don't want to plug in this book, but I have to, because it's not my book. But it's called The 5 Languages of Love, right? I didn't find this book until we got married, I think. But I figured it out as we were dating, and that's that. For me to feel love, I really need someone that's willing to spend quality time with me, that's going to be there for me and going to drop anything, because time for me is very valuable. I have very limited time. I've been in school. I went to school for 6 years, to get a PhD, a master's. So it takes, time's very valuable and limited. For him, it's different. He needs more. I don't want to say validation, but he needs someone to tell him that he's loved. He needs words, right? Yeah. So in that book, it's called he needs words of affirmation. I didn't know that. So I was giving love in different ways. Come see me, come hang out with me. And he was like, well, why, you don't love me because you don't tell me that you love me. And so a lot of the times, until we figure that out, what's going to fill my love tank, what's going to fill his love tank, right? Then we're constantly going to be thinking we're giving love when we're not giving love in the way that we need it. And the same applies to children. I don't have children yet, but the same applies to children and their parents, right? Each kid needs to be loved in a different way. Yeah. And until you feel that, right, then you're not going to be satisfied with the love that you're getting. And so I think that was really powerful for me before I even read the book.
Yeah.
I realized like, oh, that's what he needs from me. Oh, this is what I need.
Yeah. So I could come home with flowers, right? And it's like, okay, that's cute. Like
That's
cool,
cute,
right?
but
It's cute. But like, what would be really cute is if you took out the trash and you just like cleaned up a little bit around
And watched a movie with me.
Yeah, and
Straight up.
And when I understood that, I was like, okay, I gotta serve.
And that's my second one, right? Words of affirmation are his. Mine was quality of time and acts of service.
Acts of service. Got it.
Mind blowing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
and one thing that I've learned through her, you gotta show up every day. You gotta and you gotta date your spouse every day, and that is hard in the busy life that young professionals live. And when you're on your grind, you're on your hustle, you're cranking out the projects and everything, and then you got to be mindful that you have to court, you have to date, you have to take your spouse out to dinners, movies. Those things really matter, and they keep the flame alive.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I've had to kind of like check myself on, like, oh, just time out. You what you did last week, you know, it doesn't count. It doesn't hold water.
Because for us, we be like, you know what?
Yeah, no, I got you. Like, remember last Saturday we went to the movies?
Yeah, I got you. Hey, you good?
No. Like, what are you doing tomorrow, the next day, or what do you got planned? So you got to be proactive, and that's work.
And it goes both
Wow.
ways, right? It goes both ways. I think we live in a time where, you know, it's not just the man, right? If you are in a heterosexual relationship where that has to do everything, that has to plan the dates, right? I think as women, we need to take ownership also and plan the dates. And if you're preaching that you want equality in your relationship, then you gotta open the door every now and then too, right? You gotta wear the mustache every now and then too. And so I think that's one of the things that I have to check myself, like, oh, I want all these things that a quote unquote man's supposed to give me. Well, then I better also deliver those things too. Because if I want equality, I need to then do what I expect from him. And it's supposed to be an equal partnership. And I think we also need to realize that so that then it becomes a partnership rather than you do this, I do this, you do this.
Right.
Then it becomes me dictating.
Yeah.
And I hate that because then I look like I'm nagging. Right?
And you don't want to look like you're nagging.
I don't like that.
It's just like we both don't like it.
No.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So let me ask you a quick question, okay? Just very quick. So if I'm dating a girl, I know I'm always gonna. It just feels right to obviously pay for the first date, the first maybe few dates, but like at what point should I be like in my mind like, okay, like, you know, you could pay for something too, like, so what do you think?
So since the way society, I'll tell you what I think, and what I think for me personally, and what I think society thinks, right?
Yeah.
So when I would go on first dates, I would offer to pay. Why? Partly because I like to
That's
sort
wifey,
of
man. Oh, you got a good one. It's awesome. Awesome.
I like to sort of shake the status quo. What I wasn't realizing is that to some people that was offensive. To them it meant, oh, they're not letting me be a man because society tells me I have to pay and I have to court her, right? Again, speaking in a heterosexual relationship, right? So she must have not liked this date. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but to me, I was trying to shake things up because in my relationship, I want to be treated as an equal. And to be an equal, I need to also pay. I need to, you know what I mean? But if you're dating a girl who obviously only wants to get paid for all the time, then they're going to want that sort of hierarchy in their relationship too.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's my prediction.
But I feel like there are some people who contradict that themselves, where they show up in a way of what they expect. But then what they say they believe in doesn't line up with how they act.
Because it's so ingrained in our mind what women are supposed to do and what men are supposed to do. It is deeply ingrained. I don't care if you claim to be a feminist. At the end of the day, in your household, what you saw growing up, a lot of times is going to get modeled. It is.
So what's you guys' dynamic? How would you state your dynamic as partners? Because I look at you guys as you guys are partners. You guys, boom, together. But what is the dynamic at play for the most part? I know there also changes, you know, in relationships it can change from time to time.
Absolutely.
But for the most part, how would you guys describe your dynamic together?
Well, I think since she was in school 10 years at UCLA, and then in this last year, she's been making her own income, teaching at Cal State LA,
killing it.
And so now we got dual income. So this was like the goal, right? It was, I'm gonna grind out. We're gonna grind out while you're in school. You're gonna get out, and then our economics are gonna come together, and we're gonna build a stronger economic base, and that's what we're doing. What that has done is now we can have conversations around finances, and I not have leverage necessarily.
There is no leverage. It's equal.
It's equal, and so what I would say is like that's the dynamic, right? Is that there's equality like in the truest sense, and it's working out like really good. Of course, now as a young couple living in LA, we've realized too it's really expensive to live here. So now the dual income is great, and so now we want to continue pushing through economically to make it in a city like LA where the cost of living is just getting so high, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll add, so I grew up in a household that was very male driven. So my dad was expected to be served by hand every day, and if not, the woman was seen as devalued. And we recognize that as a family system now. And so growing up seeing that, I said, oh no, I'm not, I want to be a working professional. My mom was a working professional, labor intensive work, but she was working. And so why is that? And so I always challenge sort of that hierarchy, that patriarchy. And so in our relationship, I think cooking was one of the biggest things, and eating together was one of the biggest things. Like, how are we going to negotiate that? Because we're both working, but I was the one that was taught to cook, not him. So I can't expect him to go and learn all these things. It needs to be a partnership.
And I was taught to be served.
Exactly. So
sounds like my family. Yeah.
Right? So every now and then we'll go to places. He's like, "So are you gonna serve me?" And I'm like, "No, you can serve yourself." But then I also have to check myself and say, "Wait a second, that's how he was raised too." So I'm disrespecting him by not at least offering every now and then, right? And so you also have to sort of give the respect, right?
Tell them we cook together.
So I'm getting there. So what we decided to do, because I would have them try to help me in the kitchen, and it was, an argument every time because I was teaching him, and I get frustrated when he wasn't doing it right.
Of course.
So we started doing this like delivery service, and they bring you the food, and you prepare it. They give you all the ingredients, and so now it sort of leveled the playing field, because now I don't know how to make the meal. You don't know how to make the meal, so we're gonna figure it out together.
We just gotta read the instructions.
Just read it.
Yeah.
And that way it sort of leveled the playing field. And then when we couldn't cook together, then I'll go get food, or he'll
do what you do.
And then same with the dishes, and so it really depends on what you value as an individual. And for me, I really value eating together, because that's how I was raised. We, as a family, we did not eat until everybody was at that dining table.
Yeah.
He did not grow up like that. Everybody would eat at separate times.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, no, eating, cooking, all those things are important, but I'm going to make a new tradition in my household. Don't expect me to cook every single day, right? Because if you're not going to be there, I'm not going to cook this meal and eat by myself, because to me, it's important to eat as a family. So that's sort of what we did.
Wow.
Which, is hard, because we're both working professionals. We get
Absolutely.
home late. Sometimes we don't make dinner till 8, and my mom yells at me, right? You're supposed to be eating at 5. Well, I don't have time. We don't have time.
Right.
So we try to carve out time at least, once a week where we cook together, and we sit and we eat a meal together, because that's important to me. And then he has things that are important to him. But that really pleased me in my satisfaction of having equality and having a family bonding time.
Wow. I feel like we could spend all day talking about this stuff. And this is a conversation much needed, because you guys are living it. It's not like some guru trying to say you should do things this way. You guys are showing us what you're doing on a daily basis. Like that's so valuable. Like I've gotten life. You guys just gave me life. And this is not something I could get. And if I were to get this, it's usually from a couple that's probably been in the game together for a while, or they're just a lot older. So thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. So as much as, look, you guys are busy. We've got to have some sort of follow-up episode where we can really give value, especially with relationships, because guys, this was awesome. But we want to know, as an audience, where to find you guys online. Where do we find you guys? Ladies first.
So I am on social media, Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well. And you can also find me through my email. So
just emails.
Yeah,
Perfect.
my professional email, jmora163@calstatela.edu. That's probably the best way to find me on a professional level. And then if you want to keep up with me, I would say, I guess my Facebook, you could just type in my full name, Jessica Morales Chicas.
Good. Right on the screen. Huh?
I know. Yeah. No. Yeah. I have it. I have all this. Like, yeah. You guys will have a web page and all that.
Yeah. It's unique since I've adopted his name as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
In the same way. So email, you can find me at jechicas at usc.edu, and then on Facebook, Joseph Chicas, and on Instagram, Joseph Chicas, on Twitter, Joseph.
You made it all uniform.
Pretty straightforward. And yeah, let's connect, let's talk, like let's engage in dialogue. I think these are all really important topics, and you know, I applaud you for doing what you're doing, man. I think it's it's really important to get like people of color like in front of on a platform where they can share some of their best practices, because a lot of times our experiences are so unique, and again, if we can help someone get from A to Z without going through all the crap, and we can just get them to that point, that destination a little quicker, a little smarter, a little more strategically, I think that's good. So thank you for creating the platform. And for inviting us. I think we could probably talk for another few hours.
Yeah, this is it got really good.
But I wish you happy holidays, and also everybody else. You know.
Absolutely.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.